Up next, I'm going to try to resurrect the most expensive soldering iron I ever purchased. Over $400 was spent on this one back in the 1980s. It's a Weller EC2000, and it hasn't worked for at least 20 years. Let's see if we can get it going. This is my old Weller soldering station. This one's a, what is this one, model of this one? This is a EC2000 soldering station. I've had this for years. I paid like $400 for this thing when I bought it, and that was in the 1980s. This was the first soldering station I ever bought. Bought it down at Active Components. Still has a sticker on it from when I got it. This one's got quite a story behind it because I used this in the shop when I was working in the business for years, and when my old bosses, he was looking after his kids. They were like, 2-3 years old at the time. And one morning I came in and I found that the cord to the iron had been cut. His kids were playing in the back and the iron had been left turned on. And it was on my bench power, but of course they were, trying things out when I wasn't there and powering up the bench to plug things in and test them. And his kid had cut the wire and blew up the board. I got in a big long battle with the owner about who was going to repair the soldering iron. He said he wasn't going to do it, and I said, well, you're going to buy me a new one then, because this was my iron and it got broken in your store on the weekend when I wasn't working. So you're going to fix the freaking thing or else, right? So he sent it away. It was away for a month or so, and it came back, and of course it was never quite the same, but at least it worked. New iron, so forth. When I left there, I brought it home, and I used it for a while, but eventually what happened is the thermocouple in the tip failed. Now this one here has a thermocouple. This is not the right iron for this, but it uses the same tip. Has a thermocouple right here to measure the temperature, and it failed. I tried to get a new iron for it at the time, and I was told that the iron was obsolete and that they could not find me a EC2000 soldering iron. And I've been trying for years, and I've just happened to be down at RP Electronics and was talking to one of the guys there, and they had this iron in the back, and he said it's got the same, looks like the same plug and all, but it's the same voltage, but there's one difference, and that's the keying. The keying on this one is in line with pin number 1, and the keying on this one here is right down the bottom of the socket. So even though it won't fit, if I remove that keying, I can make it fit, but I don't know that the wiring is the same. So let's pull this one apart and just see whether the wiring is the same. I'd love to be able to use it. This is a great iron, a great holder. It was just a fantastic iron. It was the best soldering iron I think I've ever owned, was this one. And that's why I haven't thrown it out, because I was always wanting to get another handle for it. So now that I've got one, it's got the right plug, or one that will fit, hopefully I can make it work. So before powering it up, I'm going to open it up and see what's connected to where, and make sure that it's going to be compatible. It's the same size plug, same pin spacing and everything, but with that keyway difference between the two, it may not work. But I might be able to make it work if I can rewire the plug. It's got to identify which is which. There should be basically, well, one should be ground, one wire should be ground, I would think, and there'll be the 2 for the heater and then 2 for the thermocouple. So as long as I've got the right voltage going to the heater and the thermocouple hooked up to where it should be hooked up, it should work. You see, this is what they did. They put a new board in. This is what they had to put in. Look at that. They had to make a board for this thing. I've never had this apart since it came back from Weller after my former boss's son wrecked it. But look at that. They actually had to put a new board in. Looks like they had that thing custom made, doesn't it? But that's what they gave back to me, was this. So we got to figure out which go where. Looks like there's all 5 leads are connected. One of them looks like it's going to have power to it, and one of them's going to be ground, I'm sure. That's not even going anywhere. So much for a grounded tip. They didn't even hook that one up. But we've got 2 leads, and we've got 2 for the thermocouple. That's probably a power lead there. One of these others will be a power lead, and then the others will be to read the temperature. So from just looking at the way that the number of wires that are on here, it kind of looks, well, obviously this is ground. Kind of looks like these two here might be for the thermocouple, and the reason I say that is because, well, they go down, they're just a single wire, and this one here is doubled up. There's two wires that go to this one. So I think that's probably heater, and obviously that's heater, and these two are probably the thermocouple. So let me just look at the plug. It should be the two on this side here should have some resistance that resembles a heater. So let's just measure the resistance on the outside two and see whether that's where the heater is. What we assume to be the heater. Okay, that's measuring open on this one. Okay, where is my heater? So I try to identify which pins do what on this other plug so I can rewire. So one of these is going to be a ground, so let's just see if we can figure out which one is the ground. One of these will be a tip ground somewhere. Okay, well, there's nothing there. Let's just check these other pins. This is looking for ground. I don't see the ground. Let's just check for continuity. Nothing on this one. .6 ohms on this one, on these two. Open, open, open. I think we're going to have to open up this iron and just see whether we can figure out what is what on it. So let's just do that. I wonder how this comes apart. It probably just pulls apart, I would think. So that comes off. Oh, okay. I see there's a little bit of denting on here. Let's see if I can pull this thing apart. Well, that's not going to go apart easily. Okay, it's going to pull apart. So I don't know whether it's the cable that's shot or whether the actual thermocouple itself is no good. So let's just pull this apart and just see where the wires go. Which one's which. There's one of these is obviously a ground. I guess this is the ground wire here. There's a couple of bare wires, which are probably the thermocouple wires, because I'm sure these insulated wires are for the heating element. But that looks like that's probably the thermocouple wire there, the red and the black. I don't know whether the cord's broken or whether it's just not getting continuity, but let me just check here. So between the red and the black, we should have something. We should have some type of a reading here if the temperature sensor is any good inside this one. Three ohms. Okay, is that the heating element or is that the temperature sensor? And these other ones over here are... Okay, that one's open. This is obviously a ground, this one here. Okay, that's easy to figure that one out. That one's ground. These ones might be the... So this is the heating wires are the ones that are bare? Interesting. This has got to be the temperature sensor, this one here. And that's measuring open. And that goes down to the plug down here. That's measuring open. This is the one that's, these are the ones that are measuring 3 ohms. That's got to be the heating element. And this one here has got to be ground. I'm thinking, is this ground? Yeah, that one's ground. Okay, so that's ground. These are the heating elements. This one here has got to be the temperature. And that's the two outside ones that would plug into these two ones here. Which one's not connected to anything. The other one was connected to the board. And what would explain why it doesn't work, for starters. Just the ground on this one is the opposite side. The ground on this would be connected right to power on this plug. But the concern is this heating element, or this temperature sensor, is not appearing to be working. Which is what failed on my other one, was the temperature sensor failed. Which looks like it's on these insulated wires. It was so promising there at first, but doesn't look like this old iron that it was given is going to do any good, unfortunately. Looking at this one closer, these ones appear to be the heating element. These other ones appear to be the thermal couple. I think it's a thermal couple that's in this one. They go down the center. These insulated ones go down the outside, which I think would be the heating element, and the other ones go down the middle. I'm just going to put some heat on it and just see whether that resistance changes or whether we generate any voltage or something. I don't know if it's a thermocouple or whether it's I think it's a thermocouple. So if I put heat on here, this should change value. And then that would indicate that the heating element itself is open, unfortunately. Because one of those, like say the two that go to these insulated wires here, if I measure them with my meter, you'll see they are open. Right? That's just skin resistance, that. Right? These other two on the red and the black, we have relatively like 2 ohms. I'm thinking that's the thermocouple. If I heat up my other iron and just apply heat to this should either change resistance or actually start producing a voltage if it's a thermocouple, which I think it's a thermocouple on these, if I'm not mistaken. These ones are a thermocouple as opposed to a
thermistor or
a diode or some other type of temperature compensating device. I think these are a thermocouple. So let's just see. To the red and black wires. See, right now it's measuring like 3.9 ohms. So I'll go to voltage, and I'll just take my soldering iron and I will just put some heat on the tip of this thing and see whether this thing is going to start to produce any voltage as it heats up.
A thermocouple will produce voltage in the millivolt range, and they are made by joining 2 dissimilar metals together. They're quite often used as flame detectors in pilot light gas fireplaces or furnaces, so that if the pilot light were to go out, the voltage would drop off and the gas valve would close. This could be a thermistor in here. I was told it was a thermocouple, but I don't know.
So it's producing 0.1 volts. In terms of ohms, changing resistance. You see here, the resistance is going up. So this is actually these wires are actually the thermocouple. The heating element is open on this one. See, now as it cools down, it's going down in resistance.
So this would be a thermistor, a temperature-dependent resistor. As it heats up, the resistance increases on this iron.
So it must be a thermistor or a diode or something down here. And as I heat it up, as you can see, the resistance starts to climb like crazy. Still only 35 ohms, but it's, as you can see, as it's warming up, the resistance is changing. So that's the temperature. Remove heat, and it'll go down again. Cool it down and it'll drop really quick. The other two that are on the insulated wires, that's definitely the heater. And as you can see, the heater is open. Damn. Thought I was going to be able to make a nice iron out of this, but unfortunately, this one's not going to work. But if I come across another handle, I should be able to rewire the plug to make it work. Oh well. It was worth a try. I'll keep looking, see if I can get my old iron resurrected. Yeah, I would say that the heating element is definitely shot. You can see it burned. It burned out. It's probably why it was in the surplus bin. But anyway, thanks to the guys at RP Electronics that donated this, hoping that it was going to work. But unfortunately, as you can see, the heating element is no good. Too bad. It would have been a nice iron. There's the other side of that. Noticed when I took the tip off the iron before opening it up that it looks like it's been crunched. So that's probably where it was broken. This was probably damaged before, and that looks like from the length of the wires, when I pulled the wires out here, it looks like that's where about the length of them, and both of them pulled out. So I think probably what happened is this iron in a previous life, before it went into a surplus pile, this was damaged, and they probably shorted to ground. And this being normally grounded on my base unit, which I haven't even plugged it into yet because I was going to check the wiring before doing anything, that would have shorted the ground and burned out. Anyway, the element's open, so I guess if I can come across another one of these iron, I can hang on to the plug because I got the right plug. If I come across another one of these irons, I can rewire the thing and make it work because I've got the plug for it. I should probably still have the original iron for this, my original iron as well, which on mine, it's the thermocouple is what shot. This piece here in the middle is broken off of mine. Well, at least the power supply still works. This was nice. You could dial in the temperature that you wanted up to 913 degrees in Fahrenheit. And then it would read the temperature, which of course it won't because there's no iron. But I mean, it's what I currently use is this one here. And this iron has been actually very good. I had to make a few modifications because the tip was loose. There was always a bit of play on it. But what I did is I wrapped a piece of wire around underneath here, underneath the base, just to push the element up a little bit higher so that there was less clearance, so that the tip fits snugly. Because it was like this piece for these tips were a little bit long on it for the replacement tips. These are Hakko tips that I use on here, or Hakko, or however they pronounce it. That's the tips I use is for Hakko. And for this Zaxxon, they were like 2 millimeters difference in length, so there was always a bit of play. So I mean, there's nothing wrong with this iron. I like this one. What I liked about the Weller was the holder. Maybe I can pull the holder off this and stick the holder on my other one. Then I won't have to worry. This was always a nice holder. I like that. It's much better than this piece of junk here. This is what I've got now. The problem with this one here is, well, if you don't put the iron in straight, it can touch the plastic, and you can see it's all melted because there's times where I put the iron in and it's not sitting in straight, and well, it's now touching against the side. So if you put it in straight like that, there's not a problem. But it's nowhere near as nice as that. Right? This was always a better holder. But, oh well, we'll try and find another iron for this at some point. But that's all I'm going to do on this one. As I say, it was a nice thought. And for the guys down at RP Electronics, give them a plug because that's where I've been buying my parts lately. So for the guys down at RP Electronics, thanks for thinking about me with this one. Wish it had worked out, but unfortunately the heating element, as we saw, is open. So if you guys come up with another one of these ones, let me know. Maybe we can make it work, and we'll do a video on rewiring the base unit to work with a modern iron. And that might be an option, because really any 24 volt iron with a thermocouple should, I think it's a thermocouple in here. Anyway, any of these 24 volt Wellers should be able to be rewired to this one, I would think. Anyway, thanks for watching.